everyone. We'll call our meeting to order. The first hearing we will have is on the State Historical Society, and we'll first hear from Martin DeBoer with the KLRD budget overview. Welcome, committee, Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. My name is Martin DeBoer, I'm legislative research fiscal analyst. We'll be looking at the State Historical Society. On page 1, you'll have a general overview of the agency as well as the operating expenditures and the capital improvements. Next following pages are an overview of their expenditures and some of the funds. I would like to begin on page 8 my apologies. On page 2 far. On page 6, this is for fiscal year 2022. At the top of the page, you'll see a breakdown of the legislative approved, the agency's revised estimate going into the governor's recommendation. Down below, there were no changes to the legislative approved, no changes made by the legislature last year. So for FY 2022, the agency estimates $7.9 million. This includes $4.3 million in SGF. This is an all funds increase of $879,000 or 12.5%, and an SGF decrease of $6,497 or 0.2% of the FY 2022 approved. Included in that are the capital improvements. So the agency's revised estimate includes increased capital improvement expenditures, and this is due to additional private gifts and federal funds. And that is a total amount of just over $700,000. The figure is up there in the top table. Additionally, on number 3, you'll see that the agency received additional federal grants from the U.S. Department of the Interior through the National Park Service, in addition to receiving special federal grant from the Paul Brun Historic Revitalization Grant Program. And this is to distribute as aid to local units of government and other assistance in the form of grants. The last number there, number 4, is all other adjustments. And this shows that there was a decrease in expenditures related to reduced collection of fees due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So closures of facilities and people not being able to visit the sites. So the agency estimate includes 85.0 FTE positions, and this is the same as the FY 2022 approved number. Below that, at the bottom of the page, the governor does concur with the agency's FY 2022 revised estimate. I can stand for any questions for FY 2022.
Any questions for Merle? Or excuse me, for Martin. Seeing none, please proceed, Martin.
All right. If you could turn to page 8, we'll be looking at FY 2023. Same at the top, you'll have a breakdown of the financial numbers, and down below, we have the agency request for FY 23 expenditures of $7.3 million. This includes $4.5 million SGF. So this is an all funds decrease of $586,000 or 7.4%, and an SGF increase of $264,000 is 6.2% from the FY 2022 revised estimate. Number 1, they are requesting an enhancement of the reinstatement of the COVID-19 decrease expenditures from the SGF. This is related to the reduced resources budget from last session. They are looking to restore the reduction of expenditure amount there. The all other adjustments is decrease related to, again, the collection of fees from their historic sites and any programs that they have due to COVID-19. The agency request includes the 85 FTE positions, which is the same as the FY 2022 revised estimate. Down there at the bottom of page 8, you have the governor's recommendation. The governor recommends expenditures of $7.5 million. This includes $4.7 million from the SGF. This is an increase of $125,000 or 1.7% above the FY 23 request. The increase is related to the capital improvements for the rehab and repair budget. The governor recommends an increase of $125,000 all from the SGF to increase the annual rehab and repair expenditures for FY 2023. The governor's recommendation also includes 85 FTE positions, which is the same as the FY23 request. And I can stand for any questions on fiscal year 2023.
Martin, do you know in particular what the 125,000 would be used for?
That is allocated in their general rehab and repair budget. Annually, they have received, I believe, let's see, $250,000 a year. And this was a topic that was brought up during the 5-year capital improvement plans when it was presented, looking at rehab and repairs for the various agencies and increasing costs associated. And for this agency in particular, because they do have so many historic buildings, they have a tremendous amount of repairs on these historic buildings. There was discussion about increasing it, the total annual increase for expenditures related to these rehab and repairs. So this is the governor's recommendation where she included an increase by $125,000 for those rehab and repairs, and this would be ongoing into the future.
Thank you. Any other questions for Martin? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Martin, thank you. One question when you come back. It looks like to me that you had reduced our federal funds about, what, $400,000, $500,000, is that correct? From 22 to 23?
Could you tell me where you're looking?
Well, if you see the, on your page 8, your SGF is an additional 453,000, but your federal funds, your revenue funds, special revenue funds were zero at that point. And then if you look back on our front page, you went from your federal funds in 22 were 1,197,000, and they reduced to 687,000 in 23. So why is that COVID related?
Yes, a large amount of that is related to the COVID funding that.
So what are we doing? So now we're bringing the burden back on our SGF, if I understand this right. What are we doing? Is that COVID related? Is that COVID expenditures?
To the best of my knowledge right now, I can't clarify that. I can look into that for you and get back to you if the agency is unable to.
Okay, so maybe someone from the agency could answer that question. We'll ask that question.
They'll be up next, so. Okay. Any other questions for Martin? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I understood Senator Alley's comment initially, but we are still getting federal funds and special revenue funds. They're just decreased. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, this
It's
agency.
not like it's zero. It's just that in terms of agency request, we're not requesting any additional. Is that correct?
Correct, Chairman.
There's still, what, $2,802,000 worth of federal and special revenue funds.
Correct. So this agency receives a lot of federal funds from different grants and various programs from the federal government. So they have many different streams of revenue for those expenditures.
But on page 8, it's just showing that's down $850,000, correct?
A decrease of
Yeah.
850,000,
Yeah.
yes. And then those are, I do have it listed as mostly federal grants related to COVID-19, so.
I'm sure we'll hear more about the specifics of that from the agency. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Martin. Next, we'll have Jenny Chin with the Executive Director of the Kansas Historical Society. Jenny, welcome to committee.
Thank you. I'm a much different height than you are, so excuse me. I am Jenny Chin. I'm the Executive Director of the Historical Society. Can you hear me okay, or should I take my mask off? I'm fine. Let me answer your question first about the federal money. We continue to get an allocation every single year. We had a one-time grant program that they gave out for rural properties, and we applied for it, and we were one of only 4 in the nation that got that, but it was a one-time funding. And so it was a great opportunity for our rural communities because it paid 90% of the cost of their projects. And so all the people who did get it were very grateful to get it, but that's one of the reasons it fluctuated. And we get a standard base every year to run the Historic Preservation Department because we're also under federal law as well as state laws in that area. But every once in a while they have opportunities and we take advantage of it. And Martin was right, in you can think of it as getting grants. And so we were very happy to be able to bring that to the rural areas of the state of Kansas. Are there any other questions about that before I go on with?
Senator Alley.
Thank you. Okay, so the question I got is probably, I'm not reading this correctly, on page 8, it says enhancement, reinstatement of COVID-19 decreased SGF, and the agency requests $453,000, all of SGF, in support of new exhibits. But what was the COVID-19 reinstatement?
I'm going to explain that. Can you wait just a second and do you want me to go right there now?
No,
I'll be happy to go right there now.
Your time.
So do you want me to just, okay.
Okay, Senator Fagg. Okay. Go ahead and continue,
Okay.
Jenny.
Then I'll try, but this can be a conversation, not a testimony. I have no problem with that. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I wanted to say up front, what we're asking of you this year is we have no adjustments to FY 2022, so we're just staying the course in the current year. But we are asking for your approval, and I'll just say it up front, for the governor's recommendation for 2023. And first, I thought I'd give you an update on the current budget because we did have some extra capital improvements last year. And this gets into this other question is, in FY 2022, our budget, our base budget, 10% of that was taken away. Due to the way we were estimating the revenues to come in at that moment because of COVID-19, we didn't know the economy was going to stay this strong. So we were asked during the budget process in 2022 to provide a 10% reduction. Now, many state agencies did not get that full 10%, but we did. And that's what the $454,327 was, is we were asked to give up that amount of money for at least that year. And we're here today to ask, can we get that back? That was part of the governor's recommendation to reinstate part of that. We did not ask for the entire amount back, but we asked for the amount we need to keep running. What happened because of COVID-19, there was this thought, as I'm sure you will remember, that our revenues would drop dramatically. So the budget was really reduced by the governor through allotments, and we were one of those agencies that got allotments. What we're finding after budget cuts from a series of years is we have now been cut beyond our ability to do our job in a timely manner. We are actually struggling to be able to meet deadlines, to be able to get things out to the public. We still are, but it is much slower and much harder. And for us, what that $454,000 does is provides us with 8 positions we were forced to leave open and not filled during this year due to the fact that money was cut. And the reason it's referred to as referring to COVID-19 is it was the economic impact of COVID-19 and the estimates. The estimates of the revenue at that time were way below what it turned out to be. And since there's money flowing again, we desperately need, if possible, that money back. And the governor did put that back in our budget because we did take a larger cut last year than most state agencies did. And what it did is it basically wiped out the funding for 8 positions. And that's hard in an agency our size to lose 8 positions. So we still have the FTEs. We're not asking you for the FTE. We're just asking for the money back because it's been part of our base SGF. Does that make sense at all to you, or do you have a question before I go on?
Senator Alley.
Thank you very much for that explanation. I can follow that up to this point, and that is the money that you received in 22 from the federal funds. If we look at the difference between 21 and 22, your federal funds went up almost $600,000. We're cutting those funds in 23. Is that at all related to COVID?
No, those are specifically for this rural grant program that was a one-time allocation we applied for and got from the state, from the feds. And so that was to get more money into the rural communities in Kansas for historic buildings. It just goes away after 1 year.
Okay.
So those weren't related at all. What's related to COVID is our 10% cut because we underestimated our revenues due to COVID. Does that make sense as a state? Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you talk about rural buildings in this rural part, how much money went into that area and how many projects?
It was 500,000. Most of them are around anywhere from 90,000 to, can't think how, some of them were more like 40,000. The reason it was a really good deal for the communities that got those is that they only had to put in a 10% match, which is unusually low for federal programs. And it has this name, I never can remember. It's a gentleman's name. What's the name? The Paul Bond grant program is because it is a grant or something that was given to the federal government to redistribute, particularly to states that had rural areas. So you had to have a population of under 30,000, and even if you had less than 30,000, you couldn't be part of a metropolitan area. So we were looking at very small communities.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you look on page 1, and this is kind of probably to Senator Alley's question, probably indirectly. When you talk about capital improvements, the agency had $250,000. That's a 6.2% increase, which is a big number over the year before. But then the governor recommended 9.1% increase. What's the difference between those two?
The difference is we, for many, many years, have gotten a flat $250,000 to take care of really cyclical maintenance or, more importantly, emergency repairs. And that could be everything from a lock breaking to something bigger like a tornado hitting a roof, part of a roof. And that's been going on for a very long time. And through a series of years, we have had a conversation with the Joint Committee on State Building because we have 57 properties now. We've just gotten conveyed one to someone else. And that we have a lot of buildings for an agency our size, and $250 doesn't cover anymore what the cost of construction. It's just, even in the last couple of years, it's gone up about 18%. And so we did put, the reason that's different is because we put that into our capital improvement plan, 5-year plan, and that was approved by the Joint Committee with the discussion that we need to up that base budget. And so this was the year we were going to do that. And so the governor put that in. But in reality, I mean, I want to be very honest with you, is that when we came back to ask for our budget this year, we put our emphasis on getting this $454,000 back because we are desperate on a very base level to get staffing filled at this point because we're having so much trouble getting our work done. We have a great variety of programs that are all statutory. We don't do anything at our agency that don't have statutes. related to them, and we're just having a difficult time right now, the loss of the funding for those 8 positions. So we put a greater emphasis on that than we did on the capital improvements. But I have to say to you, I would love it if you would concur with the governor, because we also need that money. If not, we will be back next year and ask for that addition. And it has to do with the number of buildings we have and how much inflation has gone up on building materials. It's becoming very difficult to, if you tried to roof your house lately, you know that costs have gone up dramatically. So this is just trying to help this smaller agency that we are be able to take care of emergency repairs. Sometimes last year we had pipes that froze and burst last winter. There's all types of things. Some of them are very small and some of them are a little bit more substantial. That doesn't answer, I'm sorry, I don't, okay.
Senator Pag, do you have another one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just trying to, when you talk about these repairs and the tornado, doesn't the insurance cover that?
No, because not all of our properties are covered under insurance. With a historic building, our main office is here in Topeka, because that's where we store all the state's records. And it is, and we're not in the downtown complex, but we are related to the buildings down here, so we can get a cost effective. It's still about $20,000 a year to pay for just the insurance on the headquarters where all the records are. But the historic sites, the reality is if they were completely destroyed, we would not rebuild them, because then the historic fiber isn't there anymore. So these are smaller damage that has to be taken care of. So we are not always eligible for insurance on those. You've looked into this, Matt. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, it's about $5 million is the deductible.
Yeah, the deductible's $5 million for the state. And those properties are not worth $5 million. So you'd still have to come up with the money. But if they were completely destroyed, we'd probably say there'd be a point at which we'd say it's not worth building them back. So $5 million is too large a deductible for our size of an agency. Did that help? Okay.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you give me an example of what one of those might be that's out in a rural community, what we're talking about?
Well, in Manhattan, the Goodenough House, which is owned by the state, but we have a partnership there with Riley County to operate it, with the Riley County Historical Society. But we've been putting work into that slowly but surely over the years, but in smaller amounts. At Fort Hayes, we have Fort Hayes out in the Hayes area. We have the John Brown Cabin in Osawatomie. Some of these, when I say 52 buildings, they're not 52 different complexes. It's just it's that many buildings altogether. Some complexes like Fort Hayes has four buildings. So some have more than one. And these have all been taken in by statute by the legislature, and then they've been assigned to us to operate. So we do our best, and we also try whenever possible to get private funds in to also help with construction costs. And sometimes that works. Sometimes when it's an emergency, we just don't have time to do that. So they are resources to the state. They're not only historical resources, but for the communities in which they are an economic it's part of their economic view of their agency and of their community, and they feel very strongly that they want those sites to continue. So we do the best we can with that.
Jenny, just one quick question. Did you receive any federal dollars like ARPA or any of those type things?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you.
We actually tried, but there were very few available for agencies like ours. And so, no, we did not.
I wasn't sure, because I know Commerce did some for theaters and stuff, and maybe you got some. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Jenny.
Okay, no more questions for me? Could I mention one thing, though? We were asked to talk about performance-based budget just briefly, and all I'm going to do is give you one statistic. First of all, I want to tell you we are always open and transparent in our actions, and so we post our numbers every year on our website and have for many, many years. But my favorite part of doing performance-based budget this year was really looking, I have one statistic I want to share with you, is every year we try, all of our programs are a different type of intensity of how much money they take. And so what I do, and Matthew does, who's with me today, we look at overall, what do these programs cost the taxpayers of Kansas every year? And my goal, if I look at it cumulatively, is to keep the cost under 50 cents a user. And I'm happy to say that this last year we got it down to 37 cents. So we're working very hard to save money, not spend a lot of extra money. If we have extra projects like the redo of the exhibits at the Kansas Museum of History, we use private funds for that. So when we ask you to please consider the governor's recommendation, that would put us in a much better place than we are today because of the budget cut of last year. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Committee, I think we'll go ahead and do the deliberation on this. I think Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on what we've heard today, I would like to make a motion that we accept the governor's recommendation.
Motion. Do we have a second? Senator Hawk seconds. Discussion? Senator Fagg?
Do we need to put on there fiscal 2021-23 on the back of that?
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we'll have our hearing on the State Library. Gabrielle Hall, KLRD Budget Overview. Gabrielle, welcome to committee.
Good morning, committee. My name is Gabrielle Hull. I'm a fiscal analyst with Legislative Research. We are also joined by Cindy Roop. She is the acting state librarian, and she will provide testimony and answer questions once I am finished. Similar to Martin's presentation, excuse me, I will start on page 6. Subsequent to the 2021 session, one adjustment was made to the $5.9 million appropriated to the state library for fiscal year 2022. The adjustment does change the current year approved amount without any legislative action required. That was an increase of $29,717, all SGF, to reflect the reappropriation of funds from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22. The funding was not used in fiscal year 21 because 2 classified staff members retired and were replaced with 2 unclassified staff members, so they had a decrease in salaries and wages. Moving to the middle of the page, the agency requests a revised estimate of $8.5 million, including $4 million SGF in fiscal year 22. This is an all funds increase of $2.6 million, but an SGF decrease of $3,062. The agency revised estimate includes 2 adjustments listed on that page. The first is Arpa COVID funding. Arpa appropriated $2.6 million in additional funding for libraries through the Federal Library Services and Technology Act. At the time the agency budget was submitted, $2.5 million was expended in fiscal year 22 as grants to public libraries and 3-year access to the Tumble Books database. The agency anticipates the remaining amount of that funding will be expended in fiscal year 22. Still on page 6, number 3, the agency's revised estimate includes other adjustments totaling $3,062 SGF. The adjustment includes decreased expenditures for salaries and wages to replace retired staff with new staff at lower salaries and wages, which is partially offset by an increase in commodities for gasoline. There's also some shifting for contractual services, with increases for 2 advertising campaigns, building rent, computer server expenses, and decreases for dues and subscriptions. The agency's revised estimate also includes 30.5 FTE positions, which is a decrease of 0.5 FTE below the amount approved by the 21 legislature. The agency reviewed open positions and eliminated positions that were likely to not be filled. Still on page 7, the governor recommends expenditures of $8.5 million, including $4 million SGF, which concurs with the agency's fiscal year 22 revised estimate. And Mr. Chair, I can pause there on questions for fiscal year 22.
Any questions on 22? Seeing none, please proceed.
Moving on to page 9. The agency requests $5.9 million, including $4 million SGF for fiscal year 23. This is an all funds decrease of $2.6 million, including an SGF decrease of a little over $24,000. The agency request includes the 2 adjustments listed on page 9, the first being Arpa COVID funding. The agency request includes a decrease of $2.6 million to reflect the end of one-time funding received under Arpa for supporting public libraries. The agency request also includes other adjustments related to decreased contractual services due to the end of 2 advertising campaigns and the one-time purchase of computer services in fiscal year 22. And that's partially offset by an increase in commodities for office supplies and increased state aid to local governments. The agency request also includes 29.5 FTEs, which is a decrease of 1 FTE position below the fiscal year 22 revised number. The agency again reviewed open FTE positions and determined that some positions were likely to remain open and could be deleted. Still on page 9, the governor concurred with the agency's fiscal year 2023 request. And I will pause there to take questions on fiscal year 23 or the budget as a whole.
Are there any questions? Yes. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Majority Leader, Vice Chairman. I was wondering, when you look at page 1, it talked FTE positions. When you look at actual for 2021 was 23.5, and then it went to 30.5, which seemed like an awful big bump in there, and I just wondered if you'd know any, that might be something that somebody could address.
Sure, I don't have specific information on why the additional FTE positions were added after fiscal year 21. The agency just noted in their budget submissions that they reviewed some open positions that could be deleted, but we can get some more information on that.
And a follow-up on that question, how many open positions do you have now? Because it says that you're included 29.5 FTE. Do you have any open positions today?
We can also check with the agency if they have any current vacant positions.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Gabrielle? Okay, thank you, Gabrielle. Next, we'll have Cindy Roop, the acting state librarian. Cindy, welcome to committee. Is that on?
How about now?
There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. If I could, I'd like to address the FTE. We do have 2 open positions. One is the state librarian position, and another one is a library assistant in our statewide services that we hope to maybe fill this week. In all, we have had 7 vacancies since the beginning of the fiscal year. I'm not quite sure what the 23.5 is, but I know that our agency was carrying a lot of classified positions that we knew that we were not going to be filling, because if we filled them, we would fill them with an unclassified position. And so there's been some confusion with when we fill a position, sometimes we would get a new classification number. So the person leaving the position was classified with one number, and when we advertised as unclassified, and sometimes there was an overlap, but we worked to clean up that. So the numbers that are later, I mean, the current numbers are more accurate. Not to say that those aren't accurate, but they just did not really reflect the agency.
Any other, Senator Fagan? Oh, okay. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to talk about our performance-based budget numbers and maybe explain some of the fluctuations there. On page 11, in the reference division, the pandemic has caused a lot of fluctuation in the number of questions. Half of all of the reference questions we get are on the legislative process or the legislature, and having a shorter 2020 session impacted us, plus being less accessible last year also impacted us. I'm happy to say that the library is open this session, and it's nice to have people in the library again. The number of items added to the Kansas Government Information Online Library had a large increase in 2020. That is a collection of state government documents that are available only electronically on state agency websites. So with a lot of staff working from home in 2020, they ended up looking for items to add to that collection. So they got a huge number of items to be processed. So that's why you see that larger figure of 9,000. The digital book collection, though, also because of the pandemic, usage increased dramatically, because for some months that was the only way people could get downloadable books or get books. And then another thing I wanted to address is that, and it's not shown in this performance measure, but it's in our other measure, we had two statewide ebook collections. One was an audio collection and one was an ebook collection. In 2020, we had an RFP and we joined those two collections into one. So people who used to have two accounts ended up with just one account. So the number of users looks like it dropped, but in actuality, it's just more people on one account. So one thing I would like to address is how we use the federal funds that we receive. We receive those from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And those, with those funds, we purchase or pay for a statewide catalog that all libraries use that lets them know what books are owned by what libraries. We also pay for interlibrary loan, which is a mechanism within this online catalog that allows libraries to request books and supply books. We also, the majority of our downloadable ebooks are paid for with federal funds, although we do receive donations, or some libraries help us out with those purchases, and we're really grateful for that. And then also the Skill Builder databases are purchased with federal funds. And those are things like Learning Express Library that give help from 4th grade up to college, help people with resumes, resume builders, help them explore careers. Also a new database that we got with our RFP in 2020 or 2019 is Ferguson's Career and Guidance Center. And then we also pay for Universal Class and Mango Languages. These are used by all libraries in Kansas. And then a couple of statewide literacy initiatives like the Kansas Notable Book Program, where we reimburse the purchase of a copy of book for every library that would like a copy, and also the Kansas Reads to Preschoolers program. Even though those programs do not cost a lot of money, they take a lot of staff time, and we feel that they're really good for awareness and to encourage children to read. And then the state library subsidizes some programs or resources that are used by your local libraries. And when I say local, I am including schools, two-year and technical schools, private and regents libraries. So one of the things that we subsidize is the statewide courier. And the courier enables libraries to send books back and forth at a cost of $1 per item. Right now, that's being impacted by having trouble finding drivers and also the rising cost of fuel. We also subsidize the summer reading program by purchasing downloadable artwork and marketing materials and a program manual for local libraries. And then our largest expenditure that we subsidize is databases. And I say subsidize because by purchasing this core group of databases, that frees your local libraries up to either purchase additional content or enhance the content that we supply, maybe with a more advanced database. In your written testimony on the last page, I have a chart that shows, it's 2013 data. I'm sorry, it's not more recent. We're working on updating that. But it shows the cost of what the state library paid for 5 different databases, and then what the cost would be if all of the libraries in Kansas had to purchase this data themselves. So our cost was a little over $1 million. The cost to the libraries in Kansas would have been $54 million, and we call that a cost avoidance of 53 million, 52 actually, closer. We're in the process of updating this chart, and we think actually the difference will probably be larger. But we feel very strongly that it's important that all the residents of Kansas have access to high quality databases and resources, and this is something that does that. We recently had so when you receive federal funding, every 5 years you're evaluated, and we received our evaluation last week. And I'd just like to quote from the report. They said that libraries stressed the fact that the state library provided services to their libraries they would not be able to otherwise afford. And it also said that these projects maximize service through collaboration and cooperation and extend local library budgets to better service Kansans. So that includes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Sorry. Thank you, Cindy. Appreciate you being here today. I think we had questions earlier, so I think we're good. Thank you. Committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think if everyone's ready, we'll go ahead and do deliberation. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we use the recommendation of the governor's budget for FY 2021-2023.
Have a motion, I have a second. Senator Alley seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. No, push the button. There you go.
Sorry about that. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Harris, and I will be presenting the Kansas Human Rights Commission budget first. In the audience here is Ruth Glover. She's the director of the Kansas Human Rights Commission. She will be speaking on behalf of the agency. I will be starting at page number 3. Just at figure 5 at the bottom, just shows the state general fund expenditures for the Kansas Human Rights Commission going back to 2014. The expenditures have remained in the $1 million to $1.1 million range steadily. If we move forward to page 4 here, that's the educational and training fund expenditures for the commission. Revenues are generated by fees for the employment law seminar that the agency holds every year. Because of the pandemic, the agency has not held the in-person law seminar in FY 2021. Because of that, you can see the dip going down from FY 2019. The expenditure decreased to $923 in FY 21. Agency estimates slight increase in FY 2022 and a large increase going up to pre-pandemic levels in FY 2023. Figure 7 also depicts the impact of the pandemic on the education and training fund of the agency. As you can see, the FY 2021 and the 22 numbers are lower, but they are estimated to go up in 2023. I'm at page number 5 with the FY 2022 analysis. Subsequent to the 2021 session, one adjustment was made to the 1.5 million, including 1.1 million from SGF appropriated to the Kansas Human Rights Commission for FY 2022. The agency carried over $388 in unspent SGF monies from FY 2021 to FY 2022. The agency estimates, middle of the page, the agency estimates revised operating expenditures of 1.5 million, including 1.1 million SGF. This is an all funds decrease of $21,638 or 1.4% below the agency's revised the FY 22 approved amount. And this is an SGF decrease of $1,587 or 0.1%. The agency estimates include the adjustments which are listed. I will touch on a couple of those. Mainly, first one is the number 2, which is the food for the employment law seminar, which covers the luncheon, snacks, and beverages that the agency provides. The agency decreased its estimate for food for employment law seminar by $15,596. Number 3, the agency increases estimates for staffing agency services by $14,839. The agency had open positions for part of FY 2021, and those were, the agency used the services of those the staffing services. Finally, the agency decreased its estimate for cybersecurity, service desk user charge, and network user charges by $11,676. The governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate, and I will pause for questions regarding FY 2022 at this point.
Sorry, any questions? Seeing none, please proceed.
I'm looking at page number 8 here. This is the FY 2023 analysis. The agency requests operating expenditures of 1.5 million, including 1 million SGF for FY 2023. This is an all funds decrease of 27,241 or 1.8%, and an SGF decrease of $43,737 or 4.1% below the FY 22 revised estimate for the agency. The agency estimate includes the following adjustments. The agency increased its estimate for food for the employment law seminar going into FY 2023. The agency expects to hold the seminar in person back again, so it has increased that estimate. And number two, the agency decreased its estimate for Access database conversion by $45,000. This project was completed in FY 2022, so the agency decreased that estimate. The governor concurs with the agency's request, and I will pause for questions about FY 2023 or about the budget in general at this point.
Questions? Seeing none? Thank you, Harris. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Next,
sir.
we'll have Ruth Glover, Executive Director of the Kansas Human Rights Commission. Ruth, welcome to committee.
Good day. I'm Ruth Glover. I'm with the Kansas Human Rights Commission. We do have a handout that we've provided to you. I'll just briefly go over our performance. Well, first of all, to tell you about the Kansas Human Rights Commission, we are the state's anti-discrimination agency. So we accept complaints of discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodation. So the main two ways that we work to achieve our mission are, first of all, to receive complaints of discrimination, investigate them, and work to resolve them. And then secondly, we do public outreach in the hopes that if people can learn what discrimination is, then it won't occur in the future. As far as our handout, first of all, we are not making any appeal to the governor's budget recommendation. Just a few highlights from fiscal year 2021. We did have staff telecommuting most of the year, and that was per Department of Administration guidance through due to the COVID pandemic. We received 951 complaints in fiscal year 2021. That was up just a little from fiscal year 2020 when we had received 911 complaints. We were able to resolve 952 complaints in fiscal year 2021 compared to the previous level of 943. And we thought that was significant because we had staff shortages during fiscal year 2021. We had 2 special investigators who were out for almost 12 weeks during the fiscal year. And then we also had a temporary staff member who passed away, and we did not replace that person. Moving on to page 2, the agency recovered $844,000 on behalf of individuals alleging discrimination. And we had an open caseload of 751 cases, which was just down 1 from the previous fiscal year. Our average processing time was 9.31 months. That was up just a little from the previous fiscal year, but we felt like that was acceptable given the staffing shortages that we had during the fiscal year. We also trained 11,605 individuals, and almost 10,700 of that was from our online harassment prevention training program. And what's significant about that is 92% of the individuals said that they had a full understanding of harassment after taking the course versus 65% before taking the course. And then moving on to page 3, we have a table that shows our funding and expenditure since 2008. If you look at the circles on row 2, column L, that shows that our state general fund has, decreased by almost $743,000 since 2008. That's a 41% decrease. And on line 6, our total funding has decreased by almost $707,000 since fiscal year 2008, and that's a 32% decrease in those funding levels. Our staffing has also decreased by about a third. And then the rest of the report shows various performance measures over the years. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you very much.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move that we recommend the governor's budget for FY 2021 through 2023 be approved.
We have a motion, we have a second. Senator Petty seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will have the Office of Administrative Hearings. Harris. Check, right? Am I getting that right?
You're getting that right, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Harris again from KLRD. I will be talking about the budget of Office of Administrative Hearings. I have in the audience here Lauren Snell. He is the administrative law judge with OAH. And I also have via WebEx Cheryl Whelan. She's the director and an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings. I'll just start with the mission real quick. The mission of the agency is to conduct fair and impartial hearings for citizens and other parties when they contest the actions of state agencies. First two pages are executive summary, so I will move on to page number 3, which is the Administrative Hearings Office Fund analysis. Funding for the agency is derived entirely from Administrative Hearings Fund. State agencies providing adjudicative proceedings are required to utilize the OAH as long as the agency's head is not involved. Agencies are billed according to contracts agreed to with the OH, and they take into account the levels of service provided as well as the number of cases filed. I'm looking at page 4 here. That's figure 6, shows the revenue, expenditures, and the ending balance for the fund. The agency changed its model FY 2021, in which its budget will be provided entirely by the 6 agencies that utilize the OAH services most often. Since that change, the agency estimates increased revenues and expenditures and the fund ending balance going into FY 2022 and 23. I'm looking at page 5 right now, which is the fiscal year 2022 analysis. Subsequent to the 2021 session, no adjustments were made to the $1.4 million appropriated to the Office of Administrative Hearings for FY 2022. The agency estimates revised operating expenditures of $1.5 million, all from the Administrative Hearings Office Fund in FY 2022. This is an all funds increase of $135,128, or 10% above the 2021 approved amount. The agency estimate includes the following adjustments. I will touch on a couple of them here. The agency increased its estimates for salaries by $96,084. This includes funding expenditures for salary for a part-time temporary administrative law judge, as well as raises for the staff salaries. The agency further increased its estimate for staff training by $28,324. This includes the National Judicial College training for administrative law judges. The governor concurs with the agency's estimate, and I will pause here for questions regarding the fiscal year 2022.
Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What kind of salary increases for the current staff was in there?
The total estimate is $96,000. It includes raises for, I think, the administrative staff and receptionist staff. I don't have the exact breakdown of how many of those staffs are, but the chunk of it is the part-time temporary administrative law judge that the company that the agency utilized.
I just wondering how much for the current staff the salary increases averaged.
I can get that information and get it back to the committee, or I could defer it to the agency when they come and when they stand for questions.
Thank you.
I think that, any other questions? Harrison? Okay, thank you, Harris.
All right.
Next, we will have Cheryl Whalen.
Morning. Thank you. Harris, you need to.
Hang on just a second. We didn't get to.
I can give you a 522 analysis real quick.
Right.
Yes, sir. The agency requests operating expenditures of $1.6 million from the Administrative Hearings Office Fund for FY 2023. This is an increase of 93,614 or 6.3% above the FY 22 revised operating expenditure estimate. The request includes adjustments which are listed. I will touch on a couple of them. The agency increased its expenditure for salaries and wages by $78,065. This is an additional request for 5% increase in salaries and staff. There's an OITS fee increase by $3,971. And the agency also estimates an increase of $2,400 for Westlaw subscription. And the governor concurs with the agency's estimate. I will stand for any questions here.
Any questions? Seeing none?
Thank you, committee. I do have Cheryl Whelan on WebEx, and Lawrence Snell is here, and they'll stand for questions on behalf of the agency.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Cheryl? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry I'm not there in person. I'm a little under the weather right now. So the salary increases for the administrative law judges have been 5% this year and projected 5% for FY23. That is to close the compensation gap between these ALJs and general and deputy agency counsels, as well as the administrative law judges for workers' comp. It's difficult to retain and recruit quality judges when even deputy general counsels are compensated at a higher rate than our administrative law judges. And the compensation gap is even more severe when we compare OAH ALJs and workers' comp. It's over $20,000. So this has been a project the last 3 years to reduce that compensation gap. Same thing with the legal assistants. They were being compensated at a rate lower than other state agencies. And so we are trying to bring them up. I did have 2 legal assistants that we increased 15% this year because they've assumed the court administrator and court clerk duties for an individual who is on extended military leave. And so that compensates them for their additional responsibilities. The other legal assistants, it's more of an 8 to 10% increase to get them to where other agencies are. We just don't want to lose out on talent because of that compensation gap. So for FY22, we did request $70,000 more for a part-time temporary administrative law judge to give our judges some relief from their high caseloads. In FY21, the judges averaged 656 cases each, which is quite high considering the types of cases that we consider. For FY23, we requested $42,000 and some change for increased costs such as desktop as a service and supplies. And the governor approved our budget appeal for about a $51,000 pay increase to continue to close that compensation gap. We continue to work with technology to be more efficient and effective. I'm happy to provide some details on that if you would like. Otherwise, I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any questions for Cheryl? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, was there any other questions for Harris? Everybody satisfied? Okay. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we recommend to the governor's budget for FY 2021, 2023 be approved, except for the 5% increase that will be addressed at a later date.
Right, we're doing all of them globally, so.
Yeah, globally.
Yes, thank you. I have a motion, we have a second. Senator Kirshen seconds. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, excuse me, Senator Petty.
My question has to do with that 5% increase, and is that 5%, the agency is requesting an additional 5%, is that over and above the budget as it's listed?
So the
I'll let Cheryl answer that.
The budget that was submitted by the governor includes that 5% salary increase for the administrative law judges. So then the 5% the governor has recommended for state employees across the board would be in addition to that 5%.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item we have is the Board of Indigent Defense Service, and Martin DeBoer with KLRD.
Yes, good afternoon, committee. We are in the afternoon now. My name is Martin DeBoer. I'm a fiscal analyst with KLRD, and I'll be presenting the Board of Indigent Defense Services budget. The first few pages, as many of these other ones, are a general overview. I would like to begin on page 6. So on page 6, at the top of the page, you'll see a outline enumerated of all the legislative approved agencies' estimate and the governor's recommendation. Below, the agency did receive approximately $2 million in SGF from reappropriated funds from FY21. So in the agency estimate, the agency requests a revised estimate of $43.7 million. This includes $43.1 million from the SGF in that fiscal year 2022. So this is an all funds decrease of $43,000 or 0.1%, and an SGF decrease of $51,612 or 0.1% from the approved amount. Number 2, the bullet right there in the agency estimate, the legislature, as a little bit of background, did approve many different enhancement supplements last year. Some of that was for increased staffing, but the agency has decreased expenditures in salaries and wages because they did not fill all of those positions. So they do have some vacant positions. This is partially offset by increased expenditures in their contractual services for their assigned counsel, as well as capital outlay for the furnishings and equipment for their new hires. The agency does estimate 244.3 FTE positions. This is 0.3 FTE positions above the approved amount, or my apologies, below the approved amount. At the bottom of the page, on page 6, is the governor's recommendation. The governor recommends expenditures of $39.1 million. This includes $38.5 from the SGF. This is a SGF decrease of $4.6 million, or 10.5% below the FY22 revised estimate. On the following page, on page 7, at the top of the page, the governor's recommendation includes that the assigned counsel, an assigned counsel caseload adjustment. So this includes a decrease of $4.6 million, all SGF, to decrease the assigned counsel caseload numbers to $16.5 million. The governor does recommend 244.3 FTE positions, which is the same as the agency's revised estimate. And I'll stand for questions on FY 2022.
Any questions on 2022, Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. On page 1, I noticed on FTF, is that a typo? The agency FY 2023 says 344.3. You carry across there's a 100 employee difference there.
For FY 2023, that is not a typo.
What?
Are you speaking to FY 23?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of going through this, but when you look at FY 20, about the middle of the page, it's got 344 employees or FTEs, and the governor recommends 244. There's a 100 difference there.
Chairman, that is correct. The agency is requesting 344 FTE
Governor's
positions.
244.
Correct. And we haven't spoken to FY 23 yet. I've only.
Okay, you're going to talk about that. Okay, I just seemed like a number jumping out at me there. Okay.
Any other questions? Please proceed, Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. So for fiscal year 2023, we can begin on page 9. So here at the top, you'll see a breakdown. You'll see the enhancements listed there at the top and any adjustments, as well as the governor's recommendations there. My apologies, that big draft stamp right there does make it a little difficult to read. But there at the middle of the page, the agency requests the $59.1 million, including the $58.5 from the SGF for FY23. This is an all funds increase of $15.4 million, or 35.2%, and an SGF increase of $15.4 million, or 35.7% above the FY 2022 revised estimate. So below that, we'll begin with the number 1, and that correlates directly to the chart up above. The enhanced agency has an enhancement request for the recruitment and retention, and this is a $4.1 million, and this addresses the pay scale adjustments as well as a internal formal training program for the Public Defender's Office. Number 2, they have an enhancement for the ethical caseload staffing and support plan. This is $8.1 million, and this includes 88 FTE positions to address the chronic attorney caseload issues and insufficient support staff in the public defender's offices. Number 3 at the bottom of the page, an enhancement to expand the public defender's office. This is $1.2 million, all SGF, to establish a public defender's office and 12 FTE positions in the 7th Judicial District, which is Douglas County. If you turn a page to the following page, to page 10, the top of the page, we have an enhancement for infrastructure upgrades. The agency requests $526,000 in anticipated ongoing maintenance costs for their case management system, and an additional death penalty defense unit office space, as well as costs associated with Westlaw upgrades and licensing video evidence software. Number 5, they have an enhancement request for the assigned counsel rate increase. So the agency requests $3.6 million SGF to fund the assigned counsel rate increase up to $120 per hour. And then number 6 is a catch-all, all general adjustments. So there's the agency request deletes the $2.2 million SGF and $7,000 all from special revenue funds for FY22, and this is attributed to the reappropriated assigned counsel fees and capital outlay expenditures related to the furnishing of equipment to fill the vacant positions in FY 2022. So they paid for it in 22, they don't need to pay for them in 23. The agency request includes the 344.3 FTE positions. This is an increase of the 100 FTE positions above the FY 2022 revised estimate. Beginning in the middle of the page, we have the governor's recommendation. The governor recommends expenditures of $46.3 million. This includes $45.7 million from the SGF. This is a SGF decrease of $12.7 million or 27.5% below the agency's FY23 request. Listed below that is a breakdown of the governor's recommendation. So for the enhancement related to recruitment and retention plan, the governor recommends $4 million, all from the SGF for the salary increases for the attorney and non-attorney staff. So this is a reduction of the 140. That's the cost of the internal training program. And I would just like to note that all of the breakdown of all these enhancements begin on page 11 if you want more further information. The following few pages will give a lot more detailed information. So these are just high-level overviews of those requests. So we'll go back to page 10 on number 8. We have the enhancement for ethical caseload staffing and support. The governor does not recommend the agency's $8.1 million in the 88 FTE positions. Number 9, the enhancement for expansion of the public defender's office. The governor does not recommend the agency's $1.2 million and the 12 FTE positions for the expansion of the public defender's office. Number 10, we have an enhancement for the infrastructure upgrades. The governor recommends $316,712, all from the SGF for infrastructure upgrades. So this is a partial recommendation. So it's a reduction of $209,800 below the agency's request. Number 11 is the assigned counsel caseload adjustment. The governor's recommendation includes a decrease of the $3.1 million, all SGF, for the fall assigned counsel caseload adjustments, which sets the caseload amount at $16.5 million. At the very bottom of the page, on page 10, the governor's recommendation includes 244.3 FTE positions. This is the 100 FTE position below the FY23 request, and this is due to not recommending those enhancement requests that include the FTE positions. And with that, I'll stand for FY23 questions.
Thank you, Martin. Any questions for Martin? Senator Frag.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Martin, that's a big difference. Was there discussion at all on that as to why she felt like we didn't need that?
I cannot speak to the mind of the governor. As legislative staff, I'm not part of those conversations.
We'll have the executive director come up. Maybe she can answer some of them. Any other questions for Martin? Seeing none, thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Heather Cessna, Executive Director of Bids. Heather, welcome to committee.
Thank you very much. My name is Heather Cessna. I'm the Executive Director of the Board of Indigent Defense Services. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for having us here today. I just wanted to start off by making a comment about the additional assistance that the legislature did give to our agency last year. The funds that we received last year to increase our assigned counsel rate and to add additional staffing to our offices has been a huge help. And it has made a difference as we've been going forward in our efforts to provide counsel to indigent Kansans accused of felony crimes. However, we continue to need assistance. And before I get into some of the details here, and I'm more than happy to answer questions as we go along, so obviously feel free to jump in. But one of the things that I wanted to draw our attention back to is that while we are back again this year asking for a significant increase in our funding and additional FTE positions, I want to make clear that this is not that we're randomly having our hands out asking for assistance. This is very much based on our three-phase plan that we presented back in September of 2020 to the Legislative Budget Committee on our report on the status of public defense, both addressing our staffing issues and our caseload issues, and is very much following along with the recommendations and the anticipated needs of our caseloads and our staffing and our assigned counsel as we go along. The first and foremost top priority for us this year is the staffing adjustment, which has been recommended by the governor, or not the staffing adjustment, the additional salary adjustment that's been recommended by the governor. Obviously, we had extended hearings about that last week, and I'm certainly happy to continue to answer additional questions on that conversation. We have provided the layout of what comparable pay parity would look like with other district attorney salaries here, which is where we tend to lose a lot of our public defenders to. And what that really looks like for us is increasing the starting salary of our public defenders just slightly, but it's really that mid-range that goes up so that somebody who is close to around 6 years in the system would have an ability to have a salary somewhere around $75,000, which makes us much more competitive with where you see those prosecutor salaries at that same range. And actually over the weekend, I had input that the Ohio Public Defender's Office or Ohio Public Defender System recently approved a very similar pay plan. And that would top out for our public defenders at around $115,000 for non-supervisory public defenders with extensive amounts of experience in the system. And that's in order for us to be able to retain people. The second request is the staffing request, and I was going to talk about that a little bit. I know there's already been some questions about the staffing request. So our request last year for a staffing adjustment was only funded about half of what we had asked for last year. So the staffing enhancement request that we have for fiscal year 2023 that includes those additional FTE positions is a combination of the last half of the staffing request that we made last year for our trial public defender offices. That includes trial level public defenders, additional legal assistants and investigators, and administrative assistants. And now it also includes additional funding for our capital and our appellate offices. What has happened over the last year in particular is that we've definitely seen an increase in the number of capital charged cases, and we have a real need for additional capital positions on our capital side. And we have a real shortage of sufficient numbers of appellate attorneys in the state to handle the number of appeals that we have. And so that is an addition that would have been from the second phase of our staffing requests in our report, but was included this time around because of the severe need that we have. And the reason why we're including these staffing requests is because of our caseload problems. We as a state have made the policy decision that we are going to allow prosecutors' offices the unfettered ability to charge as many crimes as they see fit without regard to whether or not we have the funding to support that within our criminal justice system. And that's a perfectly acceptable decision for the legislature to make, but it has down the line fiscal consequences. And the fiscal consequences are that we have to then fund the number of attorney positions to defend those cases. And that is what we have not been doing over an extended period of time, which is why you see these numbers, which look significant, but when you look back at our report, which is on our website at sbids.org, you can see how we've projected out those caseload needs, the number of attorneys associated, and the appropriate ratio of staffing to go with that. Just this morning in the Kansas Supreme Court argument in one of our capital cases, an issue about the appropriate staffing and caseloads came up as one of the issues in that appellate argument. I mean, this is a very real problem that we need to address very proactively. And so that's where you see a lot of those additional positions. Some of those additional positions, 12 of them specifically, are actually not included in that staffing request. They are included as part of the request a little bit later on for a public defender's office in the 7th Judicial District. That came about as a result of a request by the county commission there to look at this issue. It's part of our review that we're doing in a variety of different counties right now. This is the first one of these that has made it through the process and is coming up before the legislature as part of our budget. Based on the amount of cost, projected cost for our assigned counsel in that particular area, we do think that it would be cost effective to have a public defender's office in that area, in addition to some of the down the line additional savings with sort of the cost effectiveness with having more attorneys and more staff handling those cases as opposed to it being entirely left up to our assigned counsel. And there is some testimony there in support of that from the Douglas County Administrator. The last issue that I wanted to address was our infrastructure and our training budget. One of the things that the legislature, or one of the things that the governor did not recommend as part of our recruitment and retention package was that additional funding for our training office budget. Our training director has submitted separate testimony specifically talking about the need to be able to cost effectively train not just all of our public defense employees, but also all of our 400 and plus assigned counsel and some of their support staff in order to provide effective assistance of counsel throughout the state and all the jurisdictions that we cover. So we have a large number of people that we have to train, and being able to sufficiently plan ahead for that makes that training a lot more cost efficient if we can have an actual budget to do that with. Last but not least, one of the infrastructure requests in particular that we are looking at as part of our infrastructure enhancement is funding for our death penalty defense units to have their own office space. They are currently spread out amongst 5 different offices and are not, not together in one space. They're not able to appropriately interact as a team. As a result of that, that causes a lot of problems for our agency, in addition to the fact that the places where they are currently housed need that space in order to add the additional staffing that we've requested here, both from the staffing requests we received last year and from future anticipated staffing requests. So having that ability to move them into their own space and free up the space and the offices that they're leaving for our other anticipated staff is particularly important. You should have, in addition to my testimony, in addition to the testimony from our training director, you should also have testimony in support of our budget from the Kansas Attorney General, Derek Schmidt, from Sedgwick County District Attorney Mark Bennett, from the Douglas County Administrator in support of the Douglas County office, and from the Kansas Bar Association. There's also neutral testimony from Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, Karen Arlberger, on behalf of the Pretrial Justice Task Force, and from the judiciary as well. So I am more than happy to stand for questions if there's something specific that you would like me to answer.
Are there any questions for Heather? Senator Kirshen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your being here. On the public defenders, what's their success ratio? Or when they defend a individual, how many of them win their cases?
That's a very good question. Certainly when they are sufficiently staffed and sufficiently trained, that ratio does increase, either in dismissed cases or in better outcomes for their clients, whether that's convicted of a lesser included offense or outright reversal of their convictions or dismissal of their convictions. But that's not, I don't have that like particular stat off the top of my head for these cases, because there's just so many things that go into whether or not they are successful that frequently are more about the cases and how they're charged as opposed to the performance of the attorneys.
Sure, I understand, because if you're guilty, and lose, but that's a good thing.
Well, and we talk a lot about the appropriate outcome for the case, because there are some cases that, quite frankly, are often overcharged, and maybe the appropriate outcome is not the charge that they've been actually charged with, but something lesser than that. Sometimes it's an acquittal if they're actually innocent. So there's a zone in there of what the appropriate outcome is for the given case.
Okay.
Senator Kirshen.
Thank you. My other second question is not related to that, but on this death penalty branch, what do they do? What's their task?
So we have an entire capital line item that covers all cases that can be charged with the death penalty or death penalty eligible. So sometimes the death notice is not actually filed, but it could be, and that makes them death eligible. And so we have we have one trial office, which is the Death Penalty Defense Unit, and they have a section in Topeka and a section in Wichita to handle cases, and that's the office space that we're talking about for them. The other parts of the capital line item include 2 appellate offices in order to handle conflicts cases with each other, because we often have co-defendants. It also includes our capital habeas office, which will take those cases as they progress from direct appeal into state habeas, which is like ineffective assistance of counsel, those sorts of things. We also pay a significant number of private attorneys currently to help us handle our caseloads in the capital budget because of a lack of sufficient staffing within our public defender system or because of conflicts. So we actually have several attorneys on contract right now that are assisting the Death Penalty Defense Unit that are private attorneys because we don't have enough capital appellate public defenders.
How many death penalty people are out there that are faced with the death penalty that are being serviced?
There is 9 right now. There are a couple cases in progress at the trial level, and there's a number of them that have already gone through the system, but they're on state habeas. So it's under 15.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, over here.
No,
Names are the same now. So I'm looking at, so we actually passed out of this committee an increase to 120, up to 120, didn't we?
Yeah, so let me give you the status on that. Last year, we funded, as the legislature funded, us for paying out $100 per hour, which we've been paying out since July 1st. That House bill that would solidify that in our statutory rate. Currently, our statutory rate is $80 an hour, but we had a special budget proviso that allowed us to pay out that $100 an hour. So House Bill 2363 is currently, it's been passed by the House. It was passed favorably out of this committee in the Senate. It has not been brought up for vote at the Senate. So we do absolutely need that passed by the Senate in order to solidify that $100 an hour rate for sure. The other portion of House Bill 2363 was it allows for, beginning with the fiscal year, July 1st of 2024, would allow us to pay $120 an hour out. Obviously, that would depend on us having sufficient funding to be able to raise that up to that level at that time. Because we have such a significant need in our assigned counsel, for additional attorneys to take cases on our panels, which I know we discussed fairly extensively as part of our conversation about our salaries and the impact our turnover has on our assigned counsel last week. In order for us to try to bring in additional people into those panels, we did go ahead and ask for $120 an hour a year early for that funding. So if the Senate were to pass House Bill 2363, I do think that if we did go ahead and receive the additional funding to go up to $120 an hour, that we probably will need a special budget proviso to pay that out basically a year early.
Thank you. And then my second question was on the expansion of the public defender offices. I know you have already from District 7 in Douglas County a request, but that doesn't mean there wouldn't be others.
Absolutely not. In fact, we already anticipate that there will be at least one more that our board voted on Friday in Wyandotte County, and that will be a part of next year's budget request. We're also being asked to look at this across the board in a couple of other jurisdictions. And the reason for that in some of the other jurisdictions that we've been asked to look at is because they not only have a lack of attorneys on their panel list in some of these other areas, but they don't even have enough attorneys in their jurisdictions to handle the cases. So for instance, we've been asked to look at this in Crawford County and Lyon County as well for that reason. So we're in the process of going through that. It's an extended hearing process and gathering of information. So I know of at least one other request that we'll have for next year, but it could be more than that for that.
Yes, the Wyandotte County one has gotten a lot of press.
Yeah.
But are you talking, would that be in the same range of the 1.2 million, or is it dependent on the size of the county?
It's dependent on the size of this.
caseload.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's dependent on the size of the caseload and the staffing. So 1.2 million is based on what we are, for Douglas County, is based on what we are anticipating the caseload would be for that office, minus a small number of conflicts that would still obviously be going to the assigned counsel panel because of conflicts. In Wyandotte County's got a lot more cases, so it'll be a more significant number. Some other counties, it might be smaller.
Any other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know when I look at this, there's such a spread between the agency and the governor. I'd move that we have the entire Ways and Means Committee discuss more of the FTEs and training budget and pay raises. This is a big enough issue. I think we need to do that.
We have a motion. We have a second. Second by Senator Kirshen. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Committee, one other thing, Heather, before you leave.
Yeah.
I visited with the majority leader this morning about running HB 2363. So at some point in time, we're going to try to get that teed up. So
I very much appreciate that. And we're happy to come back and talk about all of this in much more detail whenever you want us to.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate you've been here twice now. And that's why we had you come early to kind of go over it with the whole committee. And now we go back. Everybody's kind of up to speed. So thank you a lot.
Thank you very
Committee,
much.
I think that concludes our business today. So thank you. We're adjourned. Okay. Okay, well, I'll call the meeting back to order. We had forgot to put that we were going to accept the governor's rec, and then we wanted to do what we mentioned was make sure we review the FTEs, the salaries, and the training budget. So, committee, I make a motion that we add that we accept the governor's recommendations in addition to the motion that was made by Senator Fagg, which has the entire Ways and Means Committee discuss the FTEs, the training budget, and the global pay raises. That's a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Senator Fagg. Any discussion?
We need to have that.
Right, including 21 through 23. Okay, I make that motion. Second by Senator Fagg. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We are adjourned.